Thank you everyone for coming. Please take seats and feel comfortable. It's great to have such a large audience. Today we do not have a guest speaker, but only for the reason that we have a host speaker. So it means that today's presentation is by NIA's own Associate Research Fellow, Nishikawa. And today's topic is third-order H-based schemes for hyperbolic Navier-Stokes systems. And H-based schemes are known to be very efficient, and some time ago, Katz and Sankaran suggested some way to have third-order schemes for inviscid fluxes for H-based scheme, and that was a perfect match to Hiro's hyperbolic Navier-Stokes method that Hiro has been developing for some years right now. And the result of this marriage between these two approaches is very efficient and very accurate schemes that Hiro will talk about. Please take over.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming.
And I want to remind you that you are asked to interrupt and ask questions during Hiro's presentation.
And also, please use a...
Yeah.
Thank you. Again, thank you very much for coming. So this is going to be a story about third-order discretization with hyper-formulation of Navier-Stokes. And this is an effort towards efficient and accurate and robust third-order unstructured CFD. There are several approaches to improve CFD code. Of course, the discretization and improved iterative solver, which is required not for just a steady program, but unsteady problems with implicit time step. Grid generation adaptation, the generation is considered one of the most difficult part in practical CFD programs in high-performance computing. And these items are often interrelated. If you improve one, you improve others. And in this effort, we focus on discretization. We focus on the improved discretization and improved iterative solver. This is algorithmic improvement. If the time to solution is order m to p, the n is the number of unknowns, we improve this p, lower the p. And grid generation adaptation can be potentially maybe easier, and high performance computing, the scalable algorithm can be applied to viscous terms. So the theme of this story is actually this. All is well that ends well. This is a famous problem. And another famous play by Shakespeare. Basically it says, if things turn out well, everything is well. No matter how strange it seems, you just stop worrying about it. And in this talk, we focus on third-order discretization that ends well, and then Navier-Stokes discretization that ends well. And along the way, I will define what I really mean by this. So let's start with discretization. This is an edge-based discretization. The third-order discretization that ends well, what I mean by that is that discretization is exact for quadratic solution and fluxes. And then you expect third-order accuracy, higher than second-order on unstructured grids. So once you make sure this in the discretization, and then everything is well, no matter how strange it seems. And edge-based scheme is one of the most popular formulation in practical CFD codes. Like NASA's fancy software cradles, SC Tetra, and Riviera Canto, they use edge-based discretization. And here's a conservation law, a hyperbolic conservation law. And this is approximated by this edge integration scheme. The Vj is a control volume, and the Vjk is a flux evaluated at edge midpoint. And Njk is the sum of these two normal vectors, the directed area, defined per edge. And we typically use upwind flux at the edge midpoint, given the left and right states. But of course, it doesn't have to be upwind. And the order of accuracy of this edge-based discretization is determined by how you define left and right states. If you take northern values, just the solution at J and the solution at K, and then compute flux, this is first-order accurate. And this is the most popular option. You perform linear reconstruction from J to midpoint and K to midpoint with linear extrapolation. And fluxes are computed by this extrapolated solution. This is most popular. And then this is third order can be achieved by replacing the linear gradients by quadratic gradients. And also, the fluxes are linearly extrapolated. And this is a big discovery by Katz and Sankaran, because this is a very efficient third order scheme. By the way, this is only true for simplex elements, triangles and tetrahedra. This is a very efficient third order scheme because it can be implemented as H loop, just like second order scheme, and with a single flux evaluation per H. You don't need to increase the quadrature point. And that's a big part. But it doesn't, it looks like, it looks strange here because this is linear extrapolation that cannot be exact for quadratic solution of fluxes. But at the end, this achieves exactness for quadratic fluxes. Let me explain this quickly. So we want to make sure this is exact for quadratic functions. The first part, we look at solution linear extrapolation here. And suppose solution is quadratic, exactly. And then these two formulas reduce to exactly the same value, same expression. So as indicated here, it's a quadratic curve. If you perform this linear extrapolation with gradients computed by quadratic least square, they meet at the same value, which means dissipation identically vanishes. So dissipation term has nothing to do with exactness. It just vanishes. So the exactness depends on this flux average term. So let's look at flux extrapolation. In third order scheme, we must perform this flux linear extrapolation. If the flux is quadratic, exactly the same thing, these two formula reduces exactly the same value. So again, the flux linearly extrapolated for quadratic function meets at the same place. So if you look at H-based discretization and you plug this expression into here, it's just a simple average. So it reduces exactly the same expression. So now, this is a special property of triangles and tetrahedra. This integration becomes exactly the divergence F, the PDE you are solving. So this H-based discretization, this is described in this JCT paper in detail. But this is a very special property. So H-based discretization ends well. It is exact for quadratic solution, quadratic fluxes. So we expect higher order accuracy. And in fact, yes,
Question about that or a comment? I understand it's third order, but this derivation you just went through says that basically the extra dissipation vanishes. So wouldn't it make it harder to converge it generally?
No. This is vanished only for quadratic functions. So in general, you have higher order term. So that means this dissipation term has a higher order property. It vanishes for quadratic solutions. It doesn't vanish for cubic or high order. Yeah. So I once tried quadratic extrapolation because this can be implemented easily by using kappa scheme, kappa 1/2. But if you do this, you lose third order accuracy because this part is exactly quadratic, but at the end, this H-based discretization, it doesn't recover the equation exactly. You end up with first order truncation error, which means second order accuracy on irregular mesh. So we have to stay with linear, even though this looks like exact for quadratic, but this cannot be used. And this has been confirmed numerically also by Navier-Stokes computations. And also, we shouldn't use curved elements. Once grid is curved, first of all, I don't know how to define H-based scheme. And in this JCT paper, we derived a special boundary flux formula that preserves exactness for quadratic functions at the boundary node. But for some boundary conditions, accurate surface normals are needed, like tangent condition. And you need to get this accurate normal by CAD or surface reconstruction. And these points are described in these papers. And this recent published JCT paper also describes this in detail. This is a paper with Abiota. So it looks strange. Don't use quadratic extrapolation. Don't use curved mesh. But this way, the edge-based discretization is exact for quadratic solution fluxes. So all is well. That ends well. So now you stop worrying about these strange things.
You're saying use the linear extrapolation or quadratic?
Not quadratic. You use thorough accuracy.
And linear gives you the thorough, right?
Yes. And I tried with Navier-Stokes, and I get all second order with quadratic. Yeah. So the extension to the viscous terms is not straightforward due to compatibility requirement. This is a problem I've been working for a long time. When you have third order advection scheme, third order diffusion, you just add them, you get second order scheme. Or sometimes you even get first order scheme. I'm not going to describe this in detail here, but you can see this JCP paper. By the way, you can just click these blue letters in the PDF file later. I will upload, and it will jump to a paper or seminar video. But it's not impossible. It was done by Pinbock and Katz. They extended this edge-based scheme to viscous terms. Their extension requires cubic residual gradients, but they can achieve fourth order accuracy for viscous. And second derivatives for all conservative variables are required for unstable terms, the source term. And also they claim that they need high order curved grids. I'm still trying to understand why, but that's what they say. And we take a different path. If we can write the viscous terms as a hyperbolic conservation law in this form, the third order edge-based scheme directly applies to the viscous term.
I thought I remember, though, that when you write the viscous terms of hyperbolic conservation law, you get a source term in that relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not div f equals 0, it's div
Well,
f equals...
source term can be written as a conservation law. That's what I did for JCP2.
But the thing that you get in third order was that the divergence of f was identically 0, not equal to a...
Yeah, so source term, I write it as a divergence term. Everything that divergence term.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll have to go back and look.
Yeah, I'll show.
Okay.
It will be divergence of something, which is not f plus something.
Yeah, so divergence of f plus f, another f. Yes?
So if the extension to viscous terms requires high order curved grids, isn't that introduce inconsistency with your third order method on the previous slide?
Exactly. That's why I don't understand.
Well, that's why you're taking this different route to go do that.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's abandoning that route.
Oh, he
Trying to
claims
understand what.
the claim is that you do not have to use. You are not allowed actually to use curved.
Yeah, so now we are taking different paths. Okay. Everything I said for edge-based scheme will apply to this equation. So if I can write Navier-Stokes in this form, everything goes through. And yeah, that directly applies. So let me talk about hyperbolic method. Before I talk about hyperbolic method, I'd like to define what I mean by Navier-Stokes discretization and so on. What I mean by this is that discretization must be consistent with Navier-Stokes equations. If the discretized residual is consistent with Navier-Stokes, you are solving Navier-Stokes, nothing else. So we are solving Navier-Stokes. There are methods where people try to solve, instead of Navier-Stokes, the asymptotic approximation to Navier-Stokes, like 30-moment equation or 20-moment equations. They are not exactly the same as Navier-Stokes. It's asymptotic approximation. That's not what I'm doing. My target is Navier-Stokes. So once I get residual consistent with Navier-Stokes, whatever I say, hyperbolic or whatever, the discretization ends well. And we are solving Navier-Stokes. And then all is well, no matter how strange it seems. So hyperbolic method, I started this in 2007, and there's actually a website you can look at. There's the latest information about papers and presentations available, and also it has FAQ. I started with diffusion. Write this as hyperbolic system and discretize it by upwind scheme. It was a strange idea, but it works remarkably well. And it extended to source term written as a conservation law. So the same scheme can be applied. And later, others joined development, and we demonstrated hyperbolic method for unsteady problem by treating, using BDF scheme, implicit time stable, treating the time derivative as a source term, and then source term written as a hyperbolic system. And then recently, we developed a hyperbolic system for dispersion equation with Alireza and Mario Ricciuto in India, France. The paper is in review. And in 2011, I extended this methodology to compressible Navier-Stokes. The extension to nonlinear system was considered as a difficult task, but so this was considered as a breakthrough. And since then, I get support from Army and Cradle and NASA to pursue this development. So now, once this is done, any PDE, the third order H-based scheme can be applied. And there are advantages of taking this hyperbolic path. The one is simple and efficient discretization. You already know how to discretize viscous terms because any methods developed for hyperbolic system can be applied. And also you can develop first order diffusion viscous scheme with first order gradients. And that can be useful for constructing consistent Jacobian for implicit solvents. Or you can go down systematically to P0 DG in the P molecule. And also the accurate gradients are another big advantage. And you can achieve same order of accuracy for solution gradients on irregular mesh. And also, a well-designed hyperbolic scheme can produce very smooth gradients on irregular mesh. The recently published this JCP paper discusses this accurate gradient aspect of this hyperbolic method. But if you go to cfdbooks.com, you can download hyperbolic aberration diffusion solver for 2D unstructured trees. And if you download and compile and run, you get these results here. On the left, this is a reconstructed least square gradient solution, y derivative of the solution. And it's highly noisy and inaccurate. And you can actually easily imagine what the grid looks like. It's a high aspect ratio, fully irregular triangular mesh. But on exactly the same mesh, the hyperbolic method can produce this highly smooth and accurate gradient. And improved convergence is another advantage. The stiffness due to high order derivatives completely eliminated. We are solving only a first order system. So for diffusion, order 1 over H speed up has been demonstrated. H is a mesh space, so the speed up factor grows as you refine the mesh. And time to solution, order N to P, is reduced with lower P because of this speed up. And systematic and robust solver construction is possible with first order scheme for diffusion and viscous. And this development started from diffusion, aberration diffusion, Navier-Stokes, source term, time dependent, and also we have a hyperbolic formulation for incompressible Navier-Stokes, and we have now dispersion. And because this method is based on reformulation of PDE, it can be applied to any discretization method. And we have been focusing on third order residual distribution scheme with the Alireza, and third order active flux scheme with Professor Rowe at Michigan, and third order H-based scheme with ARO and Craig. So this is so in this talk we focus on this third order H-based scheme. So all these third order, but to go beyond third order, we are actually working on DG. It's currently underway. We can go even higher without introducing additional complexity. So let me show how the
Question, maybe it's about future. So it's like for this DG, you also don't need curved boundaries. So it's like
no, we need to cover them. I think we need to cover.
Okay.
It's discretization.
Yeah, I just thought free break.
Yeah.
Free lunch.
Yeah, we'll see.
We don't know yet.
We don't know yet.
We don't know yet.
So elliptic, this is a Laplace equation, the steady diffusion. We want to discretize this. How? There's a popular formulation, the first order system, often called mixed form, traditionally called in the finite element limit. These two equations are equivalent. Whatever this t is, t can be 1, 2, whatever, minus. So we have a choice. And often we introduce pseudo-time derivative for discretization. If you add one pseudo-time on the left here, you have parabolic equation. And if you add second derivative, you have hyperbolic equation. This is a wave equation. But what I'm saying in this hyperbolic method I'm talking about, I add pseudo-time here to the first order system and then construct a first order hyperbolic system. And to me, it is so much more straightforward to discretize this system than any other forms of the equations. Because this is hyperbolic first order you can apply a lot of different techniques. So let's look at Navier-Stokes. Navier-Stokes has continuity and momentum and energy, and this tau is a viscous stress, and Q is the heat flux tensor. And mu V, mu H are scaled viscosities. And this DEF, this is a deformation tensor, gradient of the velocity plus its transpose. So the unsteady terms can be added as a source for implicit time stepping. So I will focus on steady form. The first order formulation of this Navier-Stokes, well, by the way, these are the terms containing second derivatives, right? Because tau has gradients. There is a first order formulation. I think this has been used widely in DG or first order system least square finite element. So this is a viscous term. And this first order system can be written in this form. It looks like a conservation law with source. Source comes from these two terms. But I'd like to point out this Navier-Stokes system, first order system, is not hyperbolic. Not even in implicit terms. I'll come back to this point later. But so the Navier-Stokes discretization, if you discretize this in any way you want, you can discretize it. Your discretization, this is a residual. If you expand this in Taylor series, what you find in the leading term is the Navier-Stokes equation. And here's the truncation error. So in the grid refinement, you are solving Navier-Stokes more and more accurately. So leading term is the Navier-Stokes. That's the Navier-Stokes discretization that ends well. The hyperbolic, the first hyperbolic Navier-Stokes system proposed in 2011 is this. We just add pseudo-time derivatives to the first order formulation of the Navier-Stokes. So here's the density, momentum, and energy, and the time derivative of tau, viscous stress, and heat flux. And these T are the relaxation parameters, but these are basically free parameters. Because once you reach the steady state, it doesn't matter what this is. And this has been determined to accelerate convergence to the steady state. And it takes this form, and L is the length scale taken as 1/2 pi. So we can write this system just adding pseudo-time with some coefficient, like a local preposition. And the spatial part is exactly the Navier-Stokes. And now this is hyperbolic in pseudo-time for both implicit and viscous terms. This is fully hyperbolic. And if we look at in the one-dimensional version, here's one derivative of flux. The flux can be split into implicit and viscous form. And look at the flux Jacobian. You can split implicit Jacobian and viscous Jacobian. And implicit Jacobian, we know this can be diagonalized. This is hyperbolic. And the viscous Jacobian has these eigenvalues, the same magnitude with opposite sign, implying a symmetric wave associated with viscous and heat fluxes. 0 comes from the continuity, which doesn't have viscous term. So Navier-Stokes has hyperbolic implicit, hyperbolic viscous. So any method developed for implicit can be directly applied to viscous terms. So to discretize, we look at this locally preconditioned Navier-Stokes. This is hyperbolic. And discretize this as a hyperbolic system. We can use Upwind scheme, Riemann solvers, whatever, and define the steady residual. And we can march to the pseudo-steady state, or we can simply ignore this pseudo-time step and then directly solve these residual equations. And actually, this is exactly what I do in this work. I don't have pseudo-time, and which is consistent with Navier-Stokes. Yes, because this is a discretization of this term. This is Navier-Stokes. So hyperbolic method is designed to end well. You end up with consistent discretization of the Navier-Stokes equations. And actually, this is common to Euler discretization. How do you discretize Euler equations? Well, in a spatial discretization. That's what I'm talking about. For spatial discretization, you have to look at steady Euler equations, right? And steady Euler equations, not hyperbolic. This is actually hyperbolic elliptic mixed. For subsonic flows, the acoustic subsystem has Cauchy-Riemann type structure, and which is equivalent to a pair of Laplace equations. And this is the reason why space margin is not applicable to subsonic flows. But really, people do not construct discretization based on these steady characteristics. almost always the discretization is based on unsteady characteristics. If you put pseudo time here, or physical time, now Euler equation is a hyperbolic in time, completely. So Riemann solvers, raw flux, super-G, residual distribution, almost all methods based on this unsteady characteristics. They don't care about this elliptic nature of Euler equations. So hyperbolic method does the same to the viscous term. Viscous term is not hyperbolic in space, but by putting time derivative, it can be made hyperbolic. And then the same technique applies. And so hyperbolic approach is just one path to the spatial discretization. You start with Navier-Stokes, written in a first order system, and you add some pseudo time term, and this is hyperbolic, and you discretize Riemann solvers or whatever. And then either reaching pseudo-steady state or just drop the time derivative. You end up with a consistent Navier-Stokes discretization, the consistently approximate Navier-Stokes, but with special features. The one is the elimination of the stiffness of second derivative. So you get 1 over h speed up, and high order and high quality gradients on irregular mesh. So when I look at this, the one question came to my mind. I'm still wondering. Conventional approach, you directly discretize this Navier-Stokes and get to here, the residual consistent with Navier-Stokes. So can we discretize Navier-Stokes without going through hyperbolic paths and arrive at spatial discretization with similar features like all speed up and high order gradients? And actually, there are a couple of approaches that show this feature. The relaxed gradient variable approach proposed by Hiroaki. Actually, he can achieve this 1 over h speed up. I'm not sure about high order gradients. And hybridized DG, HDG. I've heard that they can get same order of accuracy for the gradients in solution, but I'm not sure about 1 over h speed up. So there must be a way to come to the same discretization with the same feature. But to me, this is a very simple and easy to understand that there are many methods available here. So I applied this third-order recipe to HNS14. By the way, why 14? That's the number of variables, total number of equations you need to solve. And accurate gradients demonstrated for laminar flows instead of oscillatory viscous skin friction. The hyperbolic skin gives much smoother distribution. And the third-order accuracy demonstrated, and the third-order H-based hyperbolic scheme converges actually faster than the second-order conventional scheme. But I'm not very satisfied because there are limitations of this HNS14. The first one is reduced order of accuracy and velocity gradient. I can't get all velocity components, gradient components, to the same order of accuracy. If you look at these three equations, I can get accurate viscous stresses, three quantities, and then the velocity gradient. There are 4 quantities, ux, uy, vx, vy. I cannot invert this relation. But in 2 dimensions, there's a special feature here. This equation has ux and vy. This equation has ux, vy. So you can directly invert. But the remaining equation in the middle, you cannot get uy and vx with one equation. Also, because this HNS14 gives me accurate heat flux that can be translated into temperature gradient, but I cannot use accurate gradient for density and velocity. Scheme 2 is a method where these accurate gradients are used for linear reconstruction. And I think these gradients are needed for RV schemes or active flux schemes. And also second derivatives are required for third-order accuracy, for source terms and physical time derivatives. We want to avoid this completely. So I started to work on new hyperbolic Navier-Stokes, and this is the one of the two. First thing I did was replace viscous stresses by velocity gradients as a new variable. So this is G is the velocity gradient tensor. In the steady state, G will be mu v times grad v. So the viscous stress can be written in terms of G. But now G in 3 dimensions, there are 9 components. 9 components and 3 viscous heat flux and 5 Navier-Stokes. The total number of equations is 17, and I call it HNS17. Again, the special part is consistent with Navier-Stokes. This is another first-order formulation of Navier-Stokes, added pseudo-time. But this is not good enough, because I want density gradient, but the problem is there's no diffusion for density. If there is a diffusion, I can hyperbolize. And there is an interesting formulation proposed by Brenner. This is called Brenner's modification. He adds this mass diffusion to the continuity equation for physical reasons. And then we can hyperbolize. But this formulation is not widely accepted yet. So the one thing I can do is to add it anyway.
As long as it ends well.
Yeah?
So in combustion, one thing that sometimes shows up is something called a diffusion correction velocity, which is a correction onto the velocity in the scalar transfer equation. It seems to me you could come up with a diffusive term in a continuity equation that looks like that you can call the correction diffusion velocity and subtract it from on the left-hand side from the actual velocity and solve for the difference. And that way you'll get your diffusion term on the continuity consistently with everything else.
I didn't know that one. Yeah, that's probably one approach. Yeah, if there is a diffusion, I can hyperbolize, and I can get.
Yeah, but then your velocity will be actual velocity minus this correction velocity. You'll be solving the one equation with that.
Okay. Thanks. Yes.
Probably going to display my ignorance on these solving the equation this way, but effectively, what you've increased the number of independent variables.
Yeah.
How do you set a boundary condition on a stress component at a wall? I mean, for the Navier-Stokes equations, you're setting a no slip, a zero velocity, but we don't know what du dy is. We don't know what the wash is. So am I missing something? How do you set the boundary conditions for those extra equations?
But I'm not doing something really strange here. If you apply dg or first order least square finite element, you are solving exactly the same equations. And I don't know these impose these boundary conditions, but to me, if there is a directly boundary condition, if you specify the temperature, for example, and the normal temperature gradient needs to be predicted by the scheme. You cannot specify both. And so, to me, I've been exploring different options to specify something, but it doesn't make any much difference. And sometimes I shouldn't specify. In a very simple setting, 1D diffusion, in hyperbolic system, if you have a directly boundary condition, that's all you have to specify. You cannot specify the derivative. And then the discrete system is not well posed.
But then your discrete system will not be well posed because now you're introducing a newer variable there. And if you don't specify that by what you do, then your system is not well posed either.
No, it's not like that. You have a derivative program. You have to specify the value. You cannot specify the derivative because you don't know it.
Yeah, but your ux is not, don't treat it as a derivative. That's a variable. That's not a derivative because you're introducing it as a new variable.
But
that's not a derivative.
But it's a mixed condition. It's ux minus v, right? So it's not u. You see what I'm saying? So in a steady state, it's a mixed condition.
But then steady state is eventually when you get to.
But remember, his time is pseudo-time, not real time.
Yeah.
So
He throws them away.
on the boundary, you could throw it away and impose the steady mixed condition that ux equal tau, and that is the boundary condition for the gradient.
I guess what Rob's getting at is like when you go to the super Burnett equations and the Burnett equations, there's extra terms that you have to deal with to close it on the boundaries, and this is not the case in here.
No, I'm solving Navier-Stokes. And I can tell you, this discrete system will not be well posed if you specify both.
So
You don't have
not
that.
well posed, but the thing is, You will have degraded accuracy, I think, if you don't have even
No,
other
I showed already in JCP data on the boundary, you achieve a high order, third order accuracy in the derivative.
So you don't have to set a boundary condition for G or Q.
Whatever boundary condition, you're solving Navier-Stokes, right? And you have some physical boundary conditions. That's all you need.
Yeah. There are no additional boundary conditions.
Okay,
Because
so
I'm
on
solving-
a condition for a flat plate, I want to say the velocity vector is 0 at the wall.
Yeah.
So I can say that, and that's going to satisfy, that's going to give me conditions on the first 3 equations, and I can say the wall is adiabatic, so that gives me all the way up to energy. I still need more information, I think. to
No,
say
No,
for
G
G.
is a little like the stream function. The value at the wall can be anything you integrate out. The solution only depends on gradients of G. So that's the way to think of it. There's not a unique value that it has to be at the wall
Yeah.
necessarily.
It's like diffusion, you have one boundary condition. Even if you write it as a hyperbolic system, you still need just one boundary condition.
Yeah.
So you don't put derivatives at the boundary.
Yeah, you're going to have to ask the same question to DG people and the final element people. Because they are solving first order system.
But I think the answer, we don't need to have the boundary.
No. But if you know it, you can specify. But
You don't need.
you don't.
The answer is you don't need.
Yeah, you don't.
The boundary condition should come out of what the characteristics tell you whether you need
How many you
something,
want.
how many you want or need.
Yeah, that's also another point.
You've got characteristics in the Euler, and I'm sorry, in the
Yeah, in
hyperbolic
hyperbolic
system.
diffusion, it's always symmetric.
You've got viscous characteristics, and you've got inviscid.
Yeah, only one wave is coming in. So anyway, I added the diffusion term anyway, but with extremely small coefficient. So this new variable R in the steady state will be mu rho times density gradient. But mu rho is extremely small. I think this should be a level of truncation error. So that this is a Laplace operator, but with extremely small coefficient. And in this, the previous work, the hyperbolic scheme was shown to work in an extremely small diffusion limit. Advection diffusion scheme can be becomes purely advective scheme, but hyperbolic, negligibly small hyperbolic system produces active gradients. So in this way, I get density gradients and velocity gradients and temperature gradients, and now I can construct improved scheme, and this is good for RV and active flux.
Your delta, and can you go back a slide? Your,
Yeah.
no, where you were showing there. So the third line from the bottom, gradient of rho j is the ratio of rj over nu rho, and
Yes.
nu rho is 10 to the minus 12. You've got a very small number in the denominator.
Yeah, very small.
In denominator.
In
The
denominator.
denominator.
Yeah,
Of R.
10 to the minus
It's
12
the
should.
coefficient of grad rho.
Or do-
It works.
Okay.
But I think this should be a level of truncation because it's a
I get
coefficient.
scared numerically anytime I have to.
I know, I understand. I understand. Yeah, I was scared.
Okay.
So now we have hyperbolic system, and for first or second order H-based scheme, we simply split the flux into implicit, viscous, and artificial hyperbolic diffusion. And this is just H-based discretization. It has source term, and numerical flux is a sum of upwind implicit and upwind viscous and upwind artificial hyperbolic diffusion. This is a diffusion added to the continuum. And this construction of the dissipation is standard for precondition PDE. There's nothing new. I'm just following the standard procedure. So any implicit flux can be actually employed. I employed raw flux, but you can use any others. For third order scheme, yes, the source term has to be taken into account. And I'm not going through the details, but there's this can be written as a hyperbolic system. And there's no approximation here. Two formulations are equivalent. It is in this area paper. So in this way, the second order derivative, which is often required for source term discretization, is not needed in this discretization. So third order version has 4 more sourced fluxes. There are 4 source terms in 2 dimensions. And so the edge-based residual has no source and point discretization here. Everything is added in this flux. So in addition to implicit viscous artificial hyperbolic diffusion, we add upwind fluxes for source fluxes. And dissipation term plays a critical role for accuracy. I'm going to talk about it later.
Can you go over what the 20 equations or the 20 variables are?
20 variables.
You're just saying you've got 20.
Rho
This
B,
is-
yeah, E, G, nine components here, and 3 components, heat flux, and then R, density gradient, X, Y, Z.
Thank you.
Total 20. So edge-based discretization defines steady residual, and pseudo-steady state or just ignore, I do ignore in this work. So we obtain consistent approximation to the Navier-Stokes equations. So the hyperbolic discretization ends well, and then all is well. Don't worry. But actually, there is a there is a word. If you try this, actually, you still get lower accuracy in the velocity components, especially this Uy and Vx, the 2 components I talked about. The first order scheme becomes inconsistent, and second order scheme becomes first order. So hyperbolic formulation does not guarantee the same order of accuracy in the solution gradients by itself. It is the discretization. It has to be well designed. And this is a very interesting case because these are low order, but when you look at tau xy, which is just the sum of these 2 coordinates, they achieve design order, first, second, third. So my guess, I don't completely understand this, but I think this is a symmetry of the stress tensor. In the stress tensor, you only have 3 independent components in 2 dimensions. And you're trying to compute accurately 4 variables. It doesn't work. And I know there's a case where you lose accuracy, the coupling. Yeah, this is a prototype of this gradient equation, ux minus p. In a steady state, p will be ux. If you integrate this and apply edge-based discretization, you get pj times control volume, and this is the sum of the fluxes over edges. If you apply central flux, v as an average of u left and u right, and you end up with this formula. This is explicit gradient reconstruction, Green-Gauss formula. And we know very well this is not same order of accuracy of the solution. It's always 1 order lower on irregular mesh. But if you apply upwind flux introduces dissipation. Dissipation has this P, the difference in P at edge midpoint. With this, you cannot solve this locally for PJ. Now the equation is globally coupled. And I think this is a key to retain the same order of accuracy. And this is already discussed in 2014. So what I do is I look at this artificial equation, momentum time derivative, and this is a Laplacian actually, because G will be the velocity gradient. And then this is a hyperbolic system. I can easily discretize it by upwind flux. But I cannot add all this, the whole flux to the Navier-Stokes flux. That would be inconsistent. So I add just the dissipation term to the Navier-Stokes to ensure that strong coupling among gradient variables. And now the variables are coupled as if they are solving Laplace equations. And I know hyperbolic scheme works for Laplace equations. And this actually works. And before I show results, I'd like to mention a little bit, just one slide for second order HNS scheme. This is a practical option, I think. So let me explain. Scheme 2 means you use accurate gradient variables instead of least square gradients. And now we have accurate gradients for all previous variables. We perform this linear extrapolation without doing these squares. Just use these variables. But for these variables, we have to perform linear least squares. And for inviscid flux, I apply flux extrapolation, but not for viscous. Because inviscid flux depends only on these primitive variables. So in the inviscid limit, the hyperbolic scheme generates second order accurate gradients, which is equivalent to quadratic least squares. And with linear extrapolation in the inviscid term limit, this achieves third order accuracy in the inviscid term. And also the second order gradients obtained by second order hyperbolic scheme is already an improvement. Because typically the second order scheme gives only first order gradients. And also the high quality gradient is hard to get. And most of all, this second order scheme based on entirely second order algorithms. And the quadratic least square is not needed. And the quadratic least squares in 2-3 dimensions is not as robust as linear least squares. And it is great if we can avoid this. So all the results are obtained by applying a Newton-Crowd solver with variable preposition based on the exact Jacobian for first order scheme. And pseudo time derivative completely dropped. And so now I'm solving just a steady residual to the steady state. So this is accuracy verification by method of manufactured solutions in a square with highly irregular triangular mesh and a series of 15 different grids. So the red symbols are first, second, third order hyperbolic scheme. And the blue is a conventional scheme. It's a rho inviscid flux and alpha 4/3, the average viscous scheme. And these are the primitive values. And we achieve first, second, third. There are some strange behavior here for the first order scheme. I still don't understand what this is. But it looks like eventually it comes down to first order action. So anyway, first, second, third order achieved for confirmed for primitive values, and also the viscous stress components, and then heat flux. And again, we get first, second, third order accuracy. And the conventional scheme, these quantities are reconstructed by these squares, and they are only first order accurate. And the velocity gradients, and now this is first, second, and third order with artificial hyperbolic dissipation for the strong tapping. And this is an interesting case. Reynolds number 100 million. So the viscous terms are almost negligibly small. But these are velocity gradients obtained in this inviscid limit. They achieve first, second, third order accuracy still. And conventional scheme is again first order. But now, because we can achieve first, second order accuracy, the primitive variables, this has become almost inviscid scheme. So now we have high order gradients, and third order age-based scheme is applied to inviscid terms. So we have achieved second order accuracy by first order scheme, and third order accuracy by second order scheme in inviscid limit. And this is not possible with HNS17. I really need density gradients. And here's a laminar flow of a cylinder, the irregular mesh, 3 different grids, Mach number 0.2, and a relatively low Reynolds number because there is a different solution for this to this problem. So there are two big recirculation regions behind the cylinder. This is the pressure contour and viscous stress, tau XX contours. So let's compare this. HNS, this is a scheme 1, and this is a conventional scheme. The pressure contours, you don't see much difference. But in the derivatives, the tau XY, tau XX, I don't know if you can see it, this is much smoother than the reconstructed viscous stress. And if we go to scheme 2 and compare scheme 2 and scheme 1, the pressure contours are now significantly improved. Scheme 2, the inviscid term, is third order. But this is not truly third order because third order and second order mixed. But it looks like it does bring improvement. And if we compare scheme, second order scheme and third order scheme, maybe it's hard to see. But if you zoom in, you see an improvement in the contours. And this is a convergence results. The wall time is time to solution versus number of nodes. So on the finest mesh, hyperbolic method converges faster. But it doesn't really mean anything much. The point of this plot is the slope. As if you increase the number of nodes, how the time to solution increases. And there are two slopes here. One is 0.5 and the other is 2. This is the exponent to the complexity, order n to the p. In the hyperbolic system, because we remove the stiffness due to second derivatives, theoretically you can predict the slope to be 1.5. if you have second derivatives, you can predict the slope to be 2. So as you refine the mesh, the hyperbolic method has a great advantage. So whether you can bring it down or it goes up, it depends on programming, algorithm implementation, etc. But the slope is different. And here's the flat plate, Reynolds number 10,000, and the grid is relatively regular. And free stream coming from the left, and here's the flat plate. And there's a theoretical estimate for the drag coefficient for this problem. And the velocity profiles first. The x velocity, I don't see much difference, but in the transverse velocity, second order hyperbolic and third order hyperbolic, you see an improvement. But the most striking result is this drag coefficient over this relatively regular mesh. But here's the drag coefficient. Theoretical value is around 0.0096. And here's the H effective mesh size. So when you go to left, it means half finite mesh. So the second order tradition, the conventional Navier-Stokes, even on this regular mesh at the boundary, the viscous stress is only first order accurate. This is a convergence. And the second order hyperbolic scheme achieves second order viscous stress. So it has much improved convergence to the theoretical estimate. Third order does better, but I think this gap from second order traditional to second order hyperbolic is quite big. So second order hyperbolic scheme is like a third order scheme. This is something you would expect from third order scheme. But now this can be obtained with second order algorithm. And the CPU time also, again the same plot, the slopes are different. Again, it converges, will be fast for finite mesh. And just to show.
I turned away for a second, so I missed some PowerPoint slides. But the flat plate, does it include the leading edge?
Yes.
Of the flat plate, and what about the?
Yeah.
Do you have any idea about the singularities of the leading edge if it has a different behavior than conventional methods?
I don't know. I have to look into it. So this is a residual versus iteration. The second order hyperbolic, and this is third order hyperbolic. It converges like less than 100 and about 200. Conventional scheme requires over 1,000 iterations.
What size grid is this one?
This is the finest grid.
Finest grid.
Yeah. But the hyperbolic scheme is more expensive per iteration. So translated into time, water time, second order is faster, but third order actually gets slower. But I think we can improve this.
The slide before that had that time, right?
This is a iteration number.
No, but the slide before that, the one slide, before, previous slide, yeah, this is the time.
It's a wall time, right?
Yeah,
so
the,
on the finest mesh, second order hyperbolic is faster. But the third order is not really. Yeah. So the new systems are proposed, and I recommend this HNS20. And artificial hyperbolic dissipation and diffusion. These techniques are introduced to increase the order of accuracy of velocity gradients, density gradients. And accurate gradients of all primitive values can be obtained with HNS20. And I'm very interested in this second order option. Third order inviscid, second order viscous by second order algorithms. And there are some fundamental study that needs to be done. High aspect ratio issue. I thought this was an issue, but it is not. I have to write a paper. And weak strong boundary conditions. In some combination, you lose accuracy. And third order unsteady scheme without computing second derivatives. But the current focus is implementation into function equal with EDU from NIA. And we are currently working on implement this third order scheme and also the hyperbolic scheme. I'm very interested in this second order option, but eventually, ultimate goal is to get third order and Navier-Stokes on tetrahedral grids. And I think these are the keys, the high order surface normals and robust quadratic least squares. And third 3D hyperbolic Navier-Stokes solver ends well to be demonstrated. Thank you.